The performance of Apple Silicon Macs is unreal, but they just don't make them like they used to. Intel MacBooks like this unibody MacBook Pro were user upgradable, so if you knew where to get the parts, you could modify your laptop to run far better than it did from the factory. Today I'm going to show you guys the first MacBook I ever bought, and go over the 9 upgrades I made to this machine to make it one of one. So this is my 2012 15-inch unibody MacBook Pro. I bought it for £250 back in 2021, and it looked like this. 500GB hard drive, 8GB of RAM, 2.6 GHz quad-core i7 processor, 1440 by 900 display running at 60Hz, default Wi-Fi cards and optical disc reader. So I decided to take this thing a little bit further, starting from the motherboard. Of the 2.3 and 2.6 GHz CPU options, I was already running the higher-end 2.6 board. But there was another. Apple released a 2.7 GHz version with a higher boost clock and larger L3 cache. This was the place to start for me, so I contacted some guy on Facebook selling the motherboard on its own and just swapped it out for the old one. It's actually quite a hard part to find, but I think the board cost me £60, so nothing terrible. Job done, max spec CPU in place. Next I turned my attention to storage. You see, this MacBook has 2 SATA connectors on the inside. You just need to make a little bit of space by getting rid of the disk reader that most people don't use, and you've got space for 2 storage drives. You can set these up however you like, even using a RAID configuration to back up all your data if you so desire. I decided to go for a 500GB SSD as a main boot drive for speeds up to 10 times faster than the original HDDs Apple configured these with. That would give me the fastest possible boot time as well. The second drive ended up being a 500GB HDD, so I could store old video projects I didn't really need anymore. I shoot in 1080p, so really 500 gigs is more than enough for a single copy of all my backed up footage. macOS recognizes both drives at once, so I can freely move things from one to the other at any point. The 2012 15-inch MacBook Pro runs 1600 MHz DDR3 memory with 2 slots you can put your own SODIMM sticks into. I went from 8 to 16GB by buying 2 8GB sticks. A £20 upgrade. It's a real shame this isn't possible anymore. Apple has locked down upgrades on their latest MacBook Pros by soldering the components directly to the board instead of putting things in sockets like this. Anyway, the 8 to 16GB bump was great for Photoshop, especially when I had several projects open at once. So those basic components, CPU, RAM, storage, those are easy enough to upgrade on this machine if you know how. It's all very well having the processing power on your laptop, but what about the way it communicates to the outside world? Turns out the airport card responsible for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on this thing is socketed as well. With the help of a custom adapter board designed by Intriguing Industries, I was able to upgrade the airport card from the original one to one that came with a later Retina MacBook Pro. This MacBook now has AC Wi-Fi capabilities, faster speeds up to 1300 MB per second, and Bluetooth 4.0. In real-world terms, this means faster uploads and downloads, as well as features that weren't initially available for this MacBook at all, such as handoff and unlocking with an Apple Watch. Very few people do this upgrade, but with some heat shrink and a couple of very specific parts, the Mac recognizes the new card just fine. The next modification I made to this MacBook was pretty simple. Its original battery was getting a bit long in the tooth, so I swapped it out for a fresh one. Pretty easy to do in these machines, just get a 3-point screwdriver, disconnect the battery from the board, and fit the new one in its place. I have to stress, batteries are currently glued into place in Macs like the MacBook Pro and Air, so this kind of a job isn't really doable for most people these days. The Neo, which just got released, seems to have broken that trend, meaning it is possible to replace the battery in that machine yourself. Pretty cool, and if this is the way forward for Apple MacBooks, I'm absolutely here for it. Yeah, it's always nice to have a new battery. Macs can start acting a bit weirdly if their battery isn't performing as it should, so that's always the first thing to check if you're getting patchy performance and aren't sure why. Next up is an upgrade that genuinely hasn't been possible on any other type of MacBook ever. These 15-inch unibody machines came with 1440 by 900 screens, as I mentioned earlier. But Apple offered a higher quality matte textured display at purchase for an extra couple of £100 or dollars. You can get these screens used on eBay for pretty decent prices, and then swap them in yourself pretty easily. The anti-glare option is really nice. I've always been a fan of these matte screens, and it's nice to see they've had a bit of a comeback since the release of the M4 MacBook Pro. The display has silver bezels too, which is kind of a retro twist on a MacBook that otherwise looks quite modern. The display resolution has gone up to 1680 by 1050 as well, so just below 1080p. Not the greatest display, but it scales well and looks fine on a medium-sized laptop like this one. As a weird kind of boost, I have Windows installed natively on this laptop, and the Nvidia drivers actually let me overclock the display up to 100Hz. Display overclocking is strange, but it does actually work, since some panels are just able to push a higher refresh rate than they were initially designed for. 100Hz is very nice when it comes to gaming, so you won't find me complaining. So all of these upgrades are nice, but the performance still isn't stellar so many years after release. The final modification I added was a last-ditch effort at bringing temperatures down and therefore performance up. These grey rectangles are thin layers of thermal compound, similar to the thermal paste you put in between your computer CPU and cooler. Putting thermal compound on the metal heatsink that goes against the power-hungry processors within this computer allows heat to travel away from those parts and be conducted through to the bottom of the machine. You see people doing this to newer MacBooks like the M4 Air for that added performance under load, and frankly it does work. The bottom of the laptop gets extremely warm, which is the main reason Apple doesn't do this to their machines from the factory, but I saw temperatures drop by between 3 and 5 degrees while running benchmarks in Windows. I'd only recommend doing this if you usually use your laptop on a hard surface most of the time, as it can be genuinely pretty painful if you use it sitting on your lap. And yes, just to be certain I wasn't letting any performance go amiss, I added these speed holes. Probably not the most effective modification, but at least now I can be sure this MacBook is a one-of-one item. So that's the story of my 2012 15-inch MacBook Pro. My first MacBook, and really the reason this channel is here in the first place. I sold this laptop to my friend before I went off to university, and only just bought it back off him last week, so it's had a hell of a journey to make it into today's video. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next week.